Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in. In this video, I wanted to do a quick recap of the 2019 NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series season, as well as take a look at all of my 187 scale Lionel Racing Diecast Cup Series cars for 2019 that I have. So we'll go over all of the ones that I have briefly, and then we'll take a quick look at each driver's season in 2019 in numerical order. So starting off with Kurt Busch, the #1 car. For Chip Ganassi Racing, Kurt had a pretty decent first year for Chip Ganassi Racing. He had that one win at Kentucky, which I was able to personally attend, and he outdueled his brother Kyle to the checkered flag to take home the win. 6 top 5s, 18 top 10s, made the playoffs, and ultimately finished 13th in the final season standings. A good, solid first year. He'll be back at Chip Ganassi Racing and hopefully build on that for next season. For the diecast, they didn't really make one of his primary paint scheme, Monster Energy, in this scale, at least as of yet, but they did make one of his gear wrench paint scheme that he ran a few races with. Solid black with orange swish on it. Really good looking car. If you're not familiar with these HO scale cars by Lionel Racing, they're basically all the same generic mold with just decal application over them to differentiate the different manufacturers of the Ford Mustang, the Chevy Camaro, and the Toyota Camry XSE. But honestly, for this tiny scale, personally, I think they're pretty decent. And the 2-packs retail for about $5.99, and the single packs retail for $2.99, so they're essentially $3 a car. Good value for the money. Some people in the community don't particularly like them. I think they're fine. So that's Kurt Busch. We'll move on to the next driver. One of my personal favorites is the 2012 Cup Series champion, Brad Keselowski. This is his primary paint scheme for the Discount Tire Ford Mustang. Brad had another successful 2019 campaign. 3 wins, those coming early on in Atlanta, Martinsville, and the first Kansas Speedway race. The second half of the year, unfortunately, most of Team Penske fell off the cliff as they struggled to keep up with Joe Gibbs Racing and, to some extent, the advances that the Chevrolet camp made. But it was still a good year. 3 wins, 13 top 5s, 19 top 10s, and ultimately came home 8th in the final standings. I know this team is looking to do a whole lot better in 2020. Longtime sponsor Miller Lite has not re-upped to return to this team as of the taping of this video. That is a bit disappointing. Unfortunately, such is the current state of NASCAR. But I would really like to see them come back and at least do a couple races to keep that sponsorship tenure going. The diecast is the same Discount Tire paint scheme that we've seen as a partner of Brad since 2010 with very subtle changes. Now, the real car, of course, has the red tires. They didn't do that for the diecast version at 187 scale, but it is present on the 164 scale and naturally on the 124 scale versions. But still, if you're a collector in this tiny scale, it's a good representation of his car. Next, we have Austin Dillon, the 2018 Daytona 500 champion. However, 2019 proved to be a horrendous year for all of RCR, both the 3 and the 8 teams. Austin recorded 0 wins, not a single top 5, and only 6 top 10s, and came home 21st in points. This is his American Ethanol paint scheme. Halfway through the season, many of you may be aware of the issues that his primary paint scheme, or primary sponsor Dow, had. That's been well documented. I doubt that we will see a Dow car released, at least his primary paint scheme, but it is present on the quarter panel behind the rear wheel. But they did release the American Ethanol car. Not much else to say about Austin Dillon's year in 2019. Certainly he'll be looking to build in 2020. Next, we have your 2014 Cup Series champion, Kevin Harvick. This is his Mobil 1 paint scheme. Obviously, his primary sponsor, Busch Beer. You're not going to see a car with Busch in this scale. 4 wins for Harvick in 2020, 15 top 5s, 26 top 10s. He made the Final 4 to race for the championship at Homestead for yet another year, and he would come home 3rd in that battle. The car has good detailing on it. This is the paint scheme that he won with at Michigan in August. Probably most famous for taking his son Keelan for a victory lap in the passenger seat. Personally, I'm a big fan of this particular paint scheme. Not necessarily the driver, but the paint scheme for sure. And even in this tiny scale, it turned out quite well. I think Harvick, early on, at least in 2020, is going to be one of the teams that you're going to have to beat. I think Stewart-Haas Racing, for sure, has caught up with Toyota, and maybe, possibly, even surpassed them in terms of raw speed. We'll have to see. Definitely on the super speedways, at least. They are looking good. On the other end of the spectrum is the once mighty Roush Fenway Racing. 6 car of Ryan Newman. Highlight of his season has to be the second place finish at Talladega in the fall that he narrowly lost that race to Ryan Blaney. Ironically, the car that he started his Cup Series career in. I don't know if that's ever been documented, but that had the sting just that much more. But this is his Wyndham Rewards Ford Mustang that he ran several races in this season for Roush Racing. For Newman, another winless season, 3 top 5s, 14 top 10s, and a 15th place finish after making the playoffs based off his amazing ability to be incredibly hard to pass and can bring home consistent top 10 finishes. Really an improvement for this 6 team as a whole, even though Roush Fenway Racing still has a long way to go in terms of being a race-winning team. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but 2020 is going to be another building year for Roush Fenway. They do have Chris Buescher joining their stable to take over the 17 car that Ricky Stenhouse has driven, and that might just be the secret sauce or the secret ingredient that this team needs to make that next step. But for Newman, a 15th place points finish, and hopefully a better 2020 ahead. Next driver we have is Daniel Hemric in the 8 Caterpillar car. This driver will be taking a step back to the Xfinity Series in 2020, but this team and this car will still be around with rookie driver Tyler Reddick, who is your 2-time and defending Xfinity Series champion, the AAA of NASCAR. So, again, Richard Childress, as we mentioned with the 3 car, the teammate to this car just a few minutes ago, Tyler Reddick might just be the next greatest thing that can elevate this team and take them to the next step. And I know certainly Caterpillar has a lot invested with Tyler Reddick, and it would be great to see Caterpillar return to their winning ways of the early 2000s with Ward Burton. And they've poured a lot into NASCAR. They've supported NASCAR for years and years through rough drivers and rough teams like Bill Davis Racing in the Scott Wimmer years. And it would be great to see that their work and dedication pay off with making the chase and perhaps winning some races. And that might just happen with Tyler Reddick. But for Hemric, again, he did take home a consolation prize of winning the Cup Series Rookie of the Year last year, but only 1 top 5, that coming at Talladega, 2 top 10s, a chock-full ton of DNFs, and a 25th place points finish. And that ultimately would prove to be his undoing and his release from RCR. Next, we have fan favorite Chase Elliott, the 9 Napa Auto Parts Camaro. A decently done diecast, a relatively plain paint scheme, but a fan favorite nonetheless. Chase recorded, for the 2nd year in a row, 3 wins, 11 top 5s, 15 top 10 finishes. But when the playoffs came around, the wheels came off. Assumably because they didn't shop at Napa Auto Parts and they needed some more parts. But unfortunately, he would finish 10th in the point standings. So again, 2020 I think will be a much better year for Chase Elliott. And where Hendrick Motorsports ended the year compared to where they started the year in 2019 was leaps and bounds in terms of the speed that they had to Joe Gibbs Racing. I think that they're much closer than they were. So that's the silver lining for Chevrolet and Hendrick Motorsports fans. So look for better things in 2020 from Chase Elliott. Next, we have Aric Almirola. 2019 was his 2nd year driving the 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing after he took it over for Danica Patrick. Didn't get a win in 2019, as he did get a win in 2018, but he recorded 3 top 5s, 10 top 10s, and finished 14th in the points. The paint scheme was very similar to 2018 with that Smithfield white and black with the gold or 10 number. with a team like Stewart-Haas Racing, you would expect this team to win and run more competitively and definitely bring home more than 3 top 5 finishes throughout the entire season. So I believe this is one of the drivers that, although he has solid backing from Smithfield, which is crucial in this sport, eventually you do have to start producing and bringing home results, as the previous driver of this team showed, that no matter how much money you bring to the sport, eventually you have to start producing. So I really think 2020 is going to be crucial for this team and this particular driver. So I think Eric has, not to take the low-hanging fruit here, but I think somebody's got to light a fire under his bacon to produce some results in 2020. 2019 was a great year and a disappointing year all at the same time for this driver. This is Denny Hamlin from Chesterfield, Virginia, driving the FedEx Express Toyota Camry for Joe Gibbs Racing. Throughout much of the year, many people touted him as the champion-elect, the driver that was going to finally get his first Cup Series championship. He recorded 6 wins, 19 top 5s, 24 top 10s, but unfortunately, when that crucial moment came, when champions rise, this team did not rise to the occasion. They would finish 4th out of 4 in the playoff and the championship deciding round after they made a horrendously awful call in the pits that ultimately caused this car to overheat. But we'll see what happens in 2020. Again, this is your defending Daytona 500 champion team, along with 5 other wins last year. So it'll either prove to be a horrible, as history would show us, when Denny has a great year. He normally has a horrible year the following season. But let's see if 2020 changes that and he can build on a couple consistent seasons. Certainly, without question, most of the industry experts will tell you that he is in the best car currently in the sport with the best team. So he has that going for him, and a sponsor that's been with him and the team since 2005. Next, we have another fan favorite, and that's Ryan Blaney. 2019 was his 4th year in the Cup Series, his 2nd year driving for Team Penske. He recorded 1 win, that coming with that close finish with Ryan Newman at Talladega in the fall. But he was rather consistent with 11 top 5s and 18 top 10s. He finished 7th in the final points standings. Really, it can be argued that he was the best Team Penske car in the final 10 races in terms of the raw speed that they came off the truck with. But all of Team Penske, and I think even they would tell you, has a lot of work to do this offseason. It was not uncommon for them to be several tenths off the fastest cars and then struggle to get that back throughout the weekend. And by the time they were even in the ballpark, it was too late to make anything happen. So, again, 2020 is going to be a big year for a lot of people to catch those Toyotas in terms of raw speed. But there are a couple rule changes coming with the intent to bring the field that much closer together. Because as we all know, NASCAR won't let anybody get out that far ahead for too long. So we'll just have to see. 2019 was a just okay year for this driver. This is Ty Dillon, the younger brother of Austin Dillon. He recorded his first stage win in the spring race, I believe at, was it Talladega? Might have been Bristol. One of the two. This is a very underfunded team with Germain Racing. They do get a lot of their cars and setups from RCR. But to be honest, that's really not that much help at the moment. But Ty recorded 1 top 5, 3 top 10s, and a 24th place points finish. So, which outran one of the RCR cars, Daniel Hemric, who finished 25th in points. And he was only a couple spots behind his brother in the fully funded RCR effort. So really, out of the 3, you got to say this is probably the most impressive result of the 3. Next we have Clint Bowyer. This is his peak coolant and antifreeze paint scheme. He's often sponsored by Haas and Mobil 1, Rush Truck Centers, bunch of other different sponsors. 2019 was a decent year for Clint. He didn't record a win, as he did in 2018, where he got 2 wins, but he did have 7 top 5s, 18 top 10s, and finished 9th in the points. But when you take over a car for a legend in the sport like Tony Stewart, and you currently drive for him, you got to have expectations that are a little bit higher than that. So I'm not sure how much longer Clint Bowyer is going to be around, at least in Stewart-Haas racing equipment. So if you watch the sport for drama and to see drivers racing under pressure, you got to put Clint Bowyer under that magnifying glass for 2020. No question about it, especially with the amount of Ford driver development drivers that Ford currently has waiting in the wings. Chase Briscoe, definitely at the top of that list, without question. He should already be in Ford or in Cup equipment, in my opinion. He's more than ready and more than capable. Next is Ricky Stenhouse Jr., the 17 car. He has been primarily sponsored by Fastenal the past few seasons, but this is his Sunny D car, Sunny Delight. 2019 can only be described as a train wreck for this team, for the most part, because he hit everything else. I'm sure if there was a train out there, he probably would have managed to hit that. 0 wins, 1 top 5s, 3 top 10s, a 23rd place finish in the points. Ultimately caused his extended contract to be cut short. And Stenhouse will be moving to JTG Doherty Racing and driving the 47 Kroger car in 2020. And Chris Buescher, who started his career with Roush Fenway Racing a handful of years ago, will take over the 17 car in 2020. And definitely will do a better job because it's not hard to improve on constant DNFs. So, be nice to see this car get back up to where it should be running. Those of us that have been around the sport for a while, it doesn't seem that long ago that the 17 car was winning a Cup Series championship with Matt Kenseth in 2003. And it's really hard to see that this thing is more often than not on a rollback or in the garage area torn up every week. But such is life. On the other end of the spectrum, the 18 team. This is your 2019 NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series champion. Really to no one's surprise. 5 wins, 17 top 5s, 27 top 10s, which was the most on the series in the top 10s category. This team really wasn't anywhere to be seen until the final race of the season. They were consistent. They hadn't won a race since June until the final race of the year, which is pretty atypical of your championship team. But they were lying in the weeds, and like a tiger, they were waiting to pounce, and when the championship race came, they pounced, and they took home the hardware at the end of the year. It was Kyle's second championship. This team's, the 18 team's, third championship. They won the 2000 championship with Bobby Labonte and the 2015 championship in controversial fashion with Kyle Busch after he missed the first half of the year with injury. But NASCAR gave him a waiver and made him eligible for what was then the Chase, and he took home the championship. But you can't take anything away from his 2019 campaign. Very consistent. As I mentioned, 5 wins, 27 top 10s. The team deserved it. So they'll be back strong as ever in 2020. His teammate, Martin Truex Jr. This will be an interesting case study in 2020. Arguably the best team in 2019, with 7 wins, 15 top 5s, 24 top 10s, and had in second place finishing points. And had they not managed to put the tires on the wrong side of the car during a pit stop, this would likely be your champion. If you watch the lap tracker data and watch the speeds, they were considerably faster than Kyle Busch at the end of the Homestead race, the championship race, but they just could not run him down and catch him in time. However, here's the X factor. There's always got to be something. The crew chief of this team, Cole Pern, decided that he wanted to spend more time with his family, more power to him, and he has left NASCAR completely, left the North Carolina area, and returned to his home in Canada. And last I read, he opened up a ski resort business very recently. Sounds like that would be a lot less stressful than NASCAR. But hopefully it doesn't go all downhill from there, pun intended. Anyway, they were such a close-knit group. Cole Pearn started out as an engineer on this team, worked his way up to the crew chief role, won a championship in 2017 with Martin, and I don't know if the guy that's taking the role is going to be a good enough match with Martin, but we'll see. They're still in Joe Gibbs Racing Equipment. They still have full backing from Bass Pro Shops, and of course they're still in a Toyota. But you need people. This is still very much a people business. It'll be interesting to see just how well they gel, or if they don't. So, and they also have another thing going against him. Statistically, if you go over the driver that finishes second in the points, his next year, more often than not, and you can look this up, the driver that finishes second in points the previous season doesn't even win a single race the next year. This happens quite a lot, and it used to happen way more often prior to this Final Four shenanigans that goes on from 2014 to current, which I wish they'd get rid of. But we'll have to see. That's my 2 cents on the 19 team. The last Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota that we will take a look at is Erik Jones in the 20 Craftsman Toyota. This team is also sponsored by DeWalt. They won a race, one of the crown jewels, the Darlington Southern 500 for this team. That had to be the highlight of Eric's year, because once they made the playoffs, the proverbial wheels fell off. They were eliminated in the first round, and it was not good. This is a team that has, this car has won 2 championships with Tony Stewart, should have won another championship with Matt Kenseth in 2013, and Eric is more than capable, with a little bit more time, and perhaps a better crew chief that caters more to his needs, of adding to the 20 cars lineage in the Cup Series. But 2019 was not the year for this team. Perhaps the 20 car will do well in 2020. Another car to look for in 2020 is this one, the Motorcraft Menards number 21. In 2019, this was driven by, you guessed it, Paul Menard, thus the Menards sponsorship. However, halfway through the year, Paul decided that he had enough and wanted to spend more time at home with his young family. So he handpicked young prospect Matt DiBenedetto to drive this car in 2020 and beyond. This team has had a technical alliance with Team Penske for a handful of years now. That technical alliance will grow in 2020 and beyond with the Wood Brothers and Team Penske. And Matty D is very, very talented. It will be nice to see the Wood Brothers up there contending again for wins, which I firmly believe they will get at least one in 2020. And which will be the Wood Brothers, I think, if I'm right. It'll be their 100th win in the sport. So, again, another feel-good story to follow in the 2020 campaign. Next, we have Joey Logano, your 2018 NASCAR Cup Series champion for Team Penske in the Shell Pennzoil Ford Mustang. A solid campaign for the defending series champion. Nothing great, 2 wins, including a huge, monstrous win at Michigan. 12 top 5s, 21 top 10s. Just missed a place in the Final Four with a 5th place points finish. Solid year. Bordering on a really good year, but not a fantastic year. Especially when you're coming off being the Cup Series champion and falling short of making the Final Four and not even having the opportunity to defend your series champion. You got to chalk that up to a major disappointment. But still in all, any season that you win multiple Cup Series races and make the playoffs, a very successful season. Next we have William Byron, a Hendrick Motorsports driver in the Exalta Liberty University Chevrolet. So, solid year for him, 0 wins, 5 top 5s, 13 top 10s, made the playoffs. Ultimately, he would finish 11th. His 5 top 5s were his first top 5s in the Cup Series. This 2019 was only his 2nd year in the sport. in his first year with legendary crew chief Chad Knaus, 7-time championship crew chief Chad Knaus. So every team at the beginning of the year sets goals, realistic goals, and you got to think that entering 2020, their first number one goal that they would like to check off is getting that first Cup Series win. I believe that that is very realistic and will likely happen, as he did have a second place finish late in the year in 2019 at Martinsville. Next, we have Daniel Suarez, who, as of the taping of this video, has not announced his plans for 2020. Stewart-Haas Racing has announced their plans for this car for 2020, and that's hotshot rookie Cole Custer will be moving up from the Xfinity Series to pilot this ride, which comes as no surprise. And it'll be interesting to see how well he does. I think he'll do better than Suarez did. I'm not sure if he'll get a win in 2020 yet, but we have a great rookie battle setting up for next year. You have Tyler Reddick, you have Christopher Bell, you have Cole Custer. I mean, you guys, these are extremely talented drivers, and I think it's going to be a fantastic Sunoco rookie battle, all the way from the drop of the green flag in Daytona to the drop of the checkered flag at ISM Raceway in Phoenix at the end of the season. Solid Haas paint scheme here on the diecast. Even the black and red digital pattern is what I like to refer to it as. Turned out really good on these tiny 187 scale diecasts. So this would be one to pick up. Currently, you can get these in either one of the 2-car sets at Walmart, or I believe this is in the second or third wave of the mystery bags at Target. You can get the 41 car. Another guy that had a really good year in 2019 is this guy. This is the Credit One Bank and McDonald's driver and the Clover driver. Kyle Larson finished 6th in points for him. 1 win, that coming at the Dover race. 8 top 5, 17 top 10s. He was the highest finishing Chevy driver. He's the teammate to Kurt Busch at Chip Ganassi Racing. Really kind of came into his own. And he's been in the sport, or in the Cup Series full-time since 2014. And 2019 was definitely his most complete season, where he was the most competitive all the way through the year. Although he only got 1 win, I can easily name off 5 other occasions that he could have won a race with ease by having the fastest car. And this is one of those rare talents in this sport where he can make up for what the car doesn't have, especially on racetracks where the outer grooves come in. And I know this is rare in today's NASCAR, but where actual driver talent plays into it a little bit, this guy is fun to watch. So that's Larson. Next we have Darrell Wallace Jr., commonly known as Bubba. He is a African-American driver in NASCAR, a very nice guy, another fan favorite. Unfortunately, this is not one of the more well-funded teams in NASCAR, despite being Petty Enterprises, which is a name that's been synonymous with NASCAR, basically since its inception with Richard Petty. No wins, 1 top 5, 1 top 10s, 28th place points finish. Not a whole lot to write home about this year. The highlight of the year, without question, his 3rd place finish in the Brickyard 400, where it can be argued, had things gone a little bit different, he probably, maybe, could have, in a parallel universe somewhere, won that race. So definitely the highlight of this year was Indianapolis. Down to the final 2 that I have for you guys. Next, we have our 7-time series champion, Jimmie Johnson. A distinctly different look for this car and team starting in 2019 when Ally Financial Group came on board. Lowe's has been with this team since 2002 when Jimmie Johnson was a rookie. they elected to leave this team and the sport at the end of 2018, and luckily Hendrick Motorsports was able to secure Ally for a number of years. And originally, as part of that deal, they were able to secure Johnson for a number of years. However, Jimmie announced towards the end of the year that 2020 would be his last year in the Cup Series full-time. And that's sad. It really is, because the past 2 years have been tough on the 7-time Series champion. He hasn't won a race since Dover in 2017. 2019 was horrendous by Johnson standards. 3 top 5s, 12 top 10s. Failed to make the playoffs and finished 18th in the point standings. For half the field, more than half the field, that would be a really good year. Anytime you can score 3 top 5s, 12 top 10 finishes in the Cup Series, that's not half bad. But when you're Jimmie Johnson and you've won 7 championships in this sport, and, God knows how many races, 80 races, 85 races? That's not up to snuff. So Johnson will be calling it quits and hanging up his helmet, at least for full-time competition, at the conclusion of next season. So even if you're not a Jimmie Johnson fan, I think the guy's very nice, but I am not a Jimmie Johnson fan. I've never been a Jimmie Johnson fan. I would still like to see him get one more win, just to end his storybook career in a storybook manner. And the final driver that we will take a look at, and I appreciate each and every one of you that have stuck through this now over half-hour-long video. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. We have Alex Bowman. This is the driver that took over the 88 car for Dale Earnhardt Jr. when he retired a couple of years ago in the Nationwide Chevrolet. This guy had a really good and breakout season in 2019. He scored his first career win at Chicagoland, which was a thrilling race to watch. 7 top 5s, 12 top 10s, and finished 12th in the final point standings. Again, obviously, Chicagoland has to be the highlight of this driver's season, getting his first career win and then promptly getting the car stuck in the grass doing his donuts, but hey, small price to pay, right? Probably could have won a couple other races. Definitely, I think he could have won the race at Kansas that Brad Keselowski also won, but Brad kind of snookered him at the end there. But definitely, I think Bowman had the better car in terms of outright speed. Just Brad had a little bit more talent and desire, in my opinion. But a solid year for this team and for Hendrick Motorsports. Really can't complain when you win four races as an organization, 3 with Chase and 1 with Bowman. But as I mentioned when we were talking about Chase Elliott, this team is a whole lot closer in terms of speed and setups to the competition than they were at the start of the year. So I think 2020 will be a much better year for Chevrolet as a whole. And they are rolling out a newer, updated body style for the Camaro, which in terms of aerodynamic numbers, I think will be much more competitive to the Camry and the Mustang. So if you're a Chevy fan, that's all music to your ears, but we'll have to see how it plays out on track. That is the true test in this business. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you have any comments or concerns, please leave them down in the comment section below. Until next time, take care, be safe,